Hi, and welcome to this special series on the Check-In podcast, where we explore what it really means to lead well-being at work, at home, and at school. In this series, we're talking with leaders, educators, community builders who are creating cultures of care, purpose, and connection. Really excited about our guest right now, and an old colleague of mine, full disclosure, Mr. Dan Connop, who's been an absolute inspiration to me with his journey and talking about his journey. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Nelson. This is an honor. This is an honor to be part of this, not just because of the topic that you're talking about today, but to do it with you. Many years ago, we sat back to back. Our chairs used to sit back to each other, and not even knowing what I was suffering through at that particular time, humor was always something that would get me out of it. And you were the master of bringing humor into the workplace. I can just multiple times remembering, things that you did. And you reminded me this morning of a phone call where you called into a sports station and used my name, and it so much fun. So first off, I'm honored to be here. But secondly, the work that you're doing, Nelson, and I've been able to watch it from afar is changing lives. So I really wanted to take a moment to honor you and just say thank you. Thank you on behalf of all the men that are out there that are struggling, and women and children that may see this podcast, your series. You're affecting lives. So thanks for being a champion, because it's something that I'm blessed to be part of.
Right back at you, my friend. Dan, tell the people that are watching, listening, tell them who is Dan Connop?
Yeah. So I live out in BC. I've been BC born and bred. Sports are my love. I played hockey growing up, and something that I love any kind of sports. I recently retired, turned 60 in May, and it was one of my goals was to retire. So I was able to do that. I'm going to get married for the second time, February the 21st, and to a lovely lady named Monica, who I met at Yellow Pages 20 years ago when we were all working together. I have one daughter and soon 2 3 stepdaughters that'll be coming our way. And between us, we have 4 grandchildren ranging anywhere from the age of 7 months to 15 years old. They keep us busy, but definitely is a joy. And also a big part of what I do is to advocate on behalf of the world of mental health. Back in 2015, I was diagnosed with severe anxiety and multiple PTSD. I didn't really even know what complex PTSD was until the psychologist that I was working with gave me sort of guidance on what to do. So it's something that's incredibly important to me. Like to run, like to be active, but now just sort of trying to find my way in the world of retirement. It's the mornings seem good and structured. The afternoon, I feel I'm not really sure what I'm to do, and then the evening seems to roll along well. So just trying to get into that routine.
I'm sure you'll be a professional at it in no time.
Thank you.
Dan, first question out of the chute is what does well-being at work mean to you?
It means respect and kindness. Right off the bat, it's about making sure that as a leader that there's an aspect of respect and kindness. One of the things that the mantra that I go by, Nelson, I'm sure you've heard of the golden rule, which is treat others as the way you would like to be treated. I use a different one, which is the platinum rule, which is treat others as the way they want to be treated. So it's not about what works for me or how I feel, I would, work in that particular situation. It's about making sure that I have a clear understanding of each one of my team members and what and how does well-being mean to them. Some people, it might mean, daily check-ins, seeing how you're doing, being able to read someone well, or, the person that talks a lot is now quiet. The person that's quiet talks a lot, and making sure that you really, bite into what and how can I help them individually. It's also about making it a priority. Well-being has to be a priority as a leader. It's not something that just sits within a poster. You go to the lunchroom or you go on a website and it talks about mental health, but you're not walking the walk. You're just talking the talk. And the last part of it is something that I've learned over the years is kindness. Being a leader will, generate tough conversations, but that doesn't mean that you can't do it in kindness. And I think nowadays it's so imperative that we individually focus on people's needs and that we look at doing it from a respectful standpoint and leading with kindness. Because to me, that's really what wellness means to me at work and at play.
And now that you're retired, we'll dive into your memory bank here, but can you share one or two things that an organization that you've worked with did in terms of supporting mental health?
Yeah. And I would say the last organization that I worked with, I think did an amazing job at supporting people from a mental health standpoint. And how did they do it? They made everyone had access to the app Health Headspace. So it wasn't, some people would be paying for it, but they made it open for everyone. So there was an ability to, one, check in from meditation or listening to guided conversations. So I thought that was pretty cool. You could be on transit, taking 5 minutes at work to be able to have this access to this app. The other thing they did, which I thought was really valuable, is they created these employee resource groups, so ERGs. So monthly there was a mental health ERG where they would invite people, maybe like yourself, to come in and talk, or they would have individuals like I did that would come in and speak from an internal standpoint. But and they made it available to all employees. So, we did have employees that, that were customer facing. So there were at times it may have been difficult, but you could actually schedule yourself to attend these ERGs, and they had it on wellness and lots of different topics. But this one really resonated a lot. And the other thing that the organization did well was that they had an internal leadership course. So it was called the Essentials of Learning. So it'd be a new leader that would either join the organization or had been promoted, which is now going to have direct reports. And it's easy to talk about, coaching and talking about having difficult conversations, but they actually introduced a model on mental health and well-being and being able to understand when you're overworked, understanding what burnout looked like. And to me, that was something I'd never seen in a leadership course. It was all about, how do you coach to numbers? How do you make sure that people are, answering the phones quickly? How do you make sure all of these different things? But they actually took the step to introduce mental health into the leadership course. And to me, I thought that was really valuable.
So what's one challenge that you faced being a leader and supporting teams mentally?
I think at times when looking at a project, so let's say you're going to implement a new system into your business, and everyone talks about, what are the amount of, resources that we're going to need? What is the timeline that we're going to focus on? What's the budget that we're going to be working on? But not a lot of them talk about what's the well-being of our team members going to be. Because all of us know that have worked on projects, Nelson, that they never go as smoothly as you hope, right? It doesn't matter what you're doing. It's trying to put a Christmas tree up. It doesn't ever seem to go the way that you want it to. But I found that organizations didn't build into their project plans what it was going to do mentally for the team members. Why not take a week where you would shut things down for a week, build it into your plan, where it gave people, an opportunity to mentally take a breath, not a vacation, right? It's not a vacation, not using my vacation to get away from work. Provide me something within my day-to-day job where I'm actually able to have a break to re-energize myself. And the other that I always found is that we would talk about mental health, but the moment that something went wrong and we had to speed up, that all went out the window. It's let's get as fast. We need evening work. We need people to work. in the weekends. And I just found sometimes that if we're going to talk it, let's make sure we walk it and build it into our plans. And I think that to me was something that we had to look at. So when the other aspect of your question is, how do you navigate it? As a leader, one, you have to have a voice to say it. Say, okay, I think the project plan's great, but what about our biggest resources, our people? How are we going to make sure that we're managing that? And sometimes that's something people want to hear, and sometimes it's not what people want to hear, but having a voice. And then for me, with my team is I would look to not just have one resource, I would look to have two resources, so that I'd have someone that was sort of sitting on the bench, for lack of a better term, that when this person got overwhelmed, I was able to slide them in. And that at times seemed to work.
Okay, so we've talked about the leaders, we've talked about the team members. Let's talk about Dan. How does Dan recharge his mental health battery?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it's not a lot of, we don't think about that as leaders. When I look at that question, I think it's such a great question to ask, because as leaders at times we put ourselves to the side. So for me, I mentioned exercise. Exercise is a big one for me, but it's connecting with other leaders and finding out how are they dealing with certain things. And sometimes that could be within the industry that I was in, or externally, something similar to this. But therapy was big for me, and still is. The ability to talk to a third party that doesn't have a dog in the fight. I know it's probably a poor term, but that I was able to talk to them and get maybe a different perspective of others. But and then the last one, and this is one I'm going to say, but was not one that I was very good at, Nelson, was boundaries. It was developing boundaries. And to me, that was something that I learned later in my career, was how to build boundaries. And once I was able to build those boundaries, I was able to feel a little bit more secure in what my mental health was. But a big part of it, exercise, talking to others, and setting those boundaries.
I'm starting the men's mental health charity. That's now, obviously, we have the Capillary for women as well. In talking to guys, because men of our age, of our generation, we grew up with Rambo, Schwarzenegger, Chuck Norris. None of them were ever in a movie where they were in front of a therapist, right? The first one that I could remember was Tony Soprano.
Yeah, right.
So at our group, we sometimes change the word therapist because there could be stigmas attached to therapists. We used to call them shrinks. We just call them mechanics. Yeah. So there's emotional mechanics, there's mental mechanics, physical mechanics, and that tends to kind of put down the wall, the barrier, makes the fence a little less high. So I love the fact that you got some additional support for yourself. That's having a coach or a mechanic on the side is always a good thing.
Love it. I think it's such a great analogy.
What advice would you give to other leaders who want to create that space?
Be accountable. Be accountable. Don't just say it, do it. Be accountable to your team with regards to leading that way. This is the big one to me, was model the behavior. I had no issue with at the end of my career telling my team, I'm having a bad day. I'm having a struggle today. I'm not feeling myself today. And it allowed them to know that they could have the exact same experience with me. Invest in trust. Right? And what does trust mean? And this is one thing that I hope, I think one of the questions you talk about is the future of leadership. Gossip. Gossip is the absolute way, the biggest way to actually kill trust. And if I want to build trust with you, Nelson, it's not just the 20, 25-minute conversation I'm having with you. What am I saying when I'm not with Nelson? How am I talking about Nelson? Am I saying, oh, that Nelson, he's doing this or he's doing that? That's how you build trust. It's by killing gossip. And if I would say to any leader, you want to create a culture where people want to thrive. Don't talk behind their back. Talk to them face to face, and trust. I think one of the things that my team would tell me constantly is they trusted me. And that's because I wouldn't speak unkindly behind them. So if you're a leader, make sure that you invest in that trust and create psychological safety. If I come to my leader and say, listen, I'm struggling, and I as a leader go tell others about it and say, oh yeah, so-and-so they're this, or so-and-so they're that. I saw something once that I read it, and I'm probably going to butcher the statement, but your leader has as much impact on your mental health as your family does, because you spend so much time with them, and you have to just really take the importance of that and really eliminate any kind of insecurity of that team member. If you want to, I remember wanting to be a leader. I thought, I want to be a manager. I want to be a manager. And I remember we worked together, and I had a team, and within about a week of it, I thought, oh my gosh, I don't want to do this anymore. I didn't know this is what had happened. People are telling me things that I'm not sure they're supposed to tell me. And I realized at that particular time is that this is important. Like, this is a gift. And how am I going to honor the gift that these people are giving me? And that's why I'm so a big believer on modeling the behavior. If you want the team to act a certain way, then I have to act exactly that way. And I think I was a good leader, and I think that was a big part of it.
Yeah, I'll throw an old name at you, and I still talk about him, and he'll go down as one of my best leaders, favorite leaders, and that was Alan Gablehouse.
I saw Al, and I know this isn't part of it, but I saw Al 3 months ago and had a coffee with him, and he changed my life, Al Gablehouse. And I don't know if he'll ever hear this, but I was in a room. I was in training, first training I did when I joined the organization that we were part of, and he was a guest speaker. He changed my life to the point that he led me down a career path that I never ever thought I would ever lead, that took me 25 years. So, yeah. So I'm glad you brought his name up, because he's an amazing man.
Amazing. Like, those streaks where, you were on fire in your sales. He was so happy for you. And when you were having a rough go there for a stretch, he was always there just to support you. And some, he hugged you when it was necessary, give you like a proverbial hug, but he'd also give you that proverbial, kick in the butt.
Yeah.
And he did it perfectly. And because we had trust, you accepted the kick in the butt. You know what I mean? Like, he was one of the most authentic people I've ever known.
Couldn't explain it any better.
Yeah.
Great man.
So let's talk about Dan. You've now retired. So how would you like people to remember you who worked with you?
So one of the things that I wanted to inspire others. I can't motivate. I don't believe motivation is something as a leader that I can do. I can inspire others, and I'll give you an example. Motivation comes internally. I have to internally be motivated, but I can be inspired. I have been inspired by what you're doing. And that's the kind of leader that I always wanted to be. Is I wanted to inspire others to do the absolute best that they can. But what I did is I knew this podcast was happening. So I reached out to the team that I worked with and asked them what they would use to describe me in one word, because I didn't want to be arrogant enough to think that I wanted others to tell me. So some of the words they said were human-centric, that I focused on the human, not an essence of the business. And sometimes, Nelson, I'll be honest with you, my leaders would tell me that was what was holding me back. that I focused too much on the individual and the team because I wanted to protect them. So being human centric. The other was, the other person said, was diplomat. I was diplomatic, that everything was fair within the environment that I worked in. And the other was I was authentic. I cried in meetings at times, if I was, explaining something. And so a lot of those words were, I wanted to inspire. It was strong from a human centric aspect. I was very authentic, and nice to know that from a team that I managed, that it was diplomatic, that that the people felt that there was no one favorite, that everyone felt that they were, treated the same.
And last one, Dan, what gives you hope for the future of well-being in workplaces?
These kind of conversations is what gives me hope to know that there's organizations that you're doing, Nelson, that are taking, working with individuals. And I know you well enough to know that these individuals that are spending time with your organization, they're going out and evangelize, going out and talking to others about what is like. They're spreading your word, and spreading the group's word. So that's one of the things is really bringing this in-house, having more conversations. Like I said, I think back of when we worked together, and team members would go on leave, and you'd never see them again. You'd never see them. It was so taboo for someone. We had EPAs, we had short-term disability, we had long-term disability. We all paid for it, but don't use it, because if you use it, you're going to be branded, unfortunately, at that particular time as lazy, someone who was looking to take shortcuts. Now I look at where we are today. I took leave. I took leave twice. And the first time I took leave, I cried at the computer as I had to send the doctor's note because I was embarrassed. My dad is passed, but he was sitting on my shoulder and he was saying, seriously, suck it up. Work harder. You're going to actually admit that you need to take time off to work on your mental health? And I did it twice. And there was shame attached to it. And there was some embarrassment that was attached to it. And I just hope, Nelson, with the work that you're doing and others are doing, that in the future, we won't have that shame. I remember someone once saying to me, who was a diabetic, why are you so anxious all the time? Can't you just stop? And I said, when you stop being a diabetic, I'll stop being anxious. Being diabetic is acceptable. Being sometimes within the world of mental health, and I can't see what that symptom is something that I hope we get rid of. I hope there's a lot of talk about mental health right now, and to me at times it's a bit of a buzzword. I don't want it to be a buzzword. I want it to be just accepted that we have a mental challenge that we're dealing with, and it won't define who we are. So that's what I hope the future. And as leaders, you won't judge your team members, that you'll actually work with them and find out how, I'll give you an example. COVID happened, and some people coming back to work got extremely anxious, but some organizations just push it, that's just the way it has to be for everyone. Why does it have to be for everyone? Why can't we treat people individually based on their challenges to provide a working place that supports them where they're at? Because I guarantee you, as a whole from the organization, it's going to make it a lot stronger. So that's my hope, is that we treat people individually.
Yeah, I love that, Dan. Where I remember we talked about, and a lot of businesses obviously do, they talk about ROI. And, if it's a new computer system, if it's a new CRM, what have you. but imagine ROI, like real true ROI on their employees, their people, which people are the engine of any company, right? And I think these conversations absolutely start opening doors, and that's the whole purpose of these is to see, like, let's open doors, let's have like real conversations and see what change we can do and we can make. You know, I'll throw the last one in before we send it off, and that's if you were to email me about what I thought of you, not that you were my direct leader back in the day, but if someone were to ask me, like, on the side, like, you know, how I was working with Dan, and if you asked Dan a question, Dan would give you an answer, and it wasn't the answer that you might have liked or whatever, but straight shooter. Like, there was no gray area with you, and I'm not saying that in a negative way at all. It was just like, you called out what needed to be called out, and you were, but you had such respect from the group that people are like, okay, like, you know, like, I'll take that advice, or I'll take that suggestion, or yeah, it was my fault, I'll take the blame for that one, or whatever. You know, you were just a straight shooter, and people loved you no matter where you worked. So I'm one of your biggest fans.
Thanks, buddy.
And Dan, thank you so much for participating in this. Great conversation, my man.
Yeah. Well, thank you again. Thanks so much for having me. I feel honored to be part of this, and I'm so proud of the work you're doing, and at any time can be involved in it. I would love it. But I think the highlight to me is just seeing you again. It's so cool to connect. So thanks for having me.
You more grays on us.
Yeah, well, yeah. I shaved mine off because there were too many grays.
Take care, Dan.
Take care, buddy.